देख लिया?
So basically, the Arya, the articles ka compilation hai mostly, and the revisions that were mentioned were also done by Sri Aurobindo.
Just like he was revising Savitri again and again, many times. Yeah, appears like that. Yeah, everything starts like this, nahi? Then the form it takes.
It's, I think, important to remember this, right? Because when you're doing this, it feels nothing.
Yeah. I think it's good that they've put it in the front, right? Yeah. काटा हुआ है, lines काट के. Amazing. Yeah. यहाँ पे इन्होंने सर औरबिंदो लिख दिया. I think maybe it's a error. I don't know. Or maybe they wanted to say Sir Aurobindo. Yeah, this is book 1. Starting omnipresent reality and the universe. So this I find really very interesting. At every chapter in the beginning, he gives these verses. The one verse that I shared with you yesterday, Gita se, it was from Life Divine only, which are relevant to the chapter. So he gives these verses. So these are 2 that he gives here. आप पढ़ोगे? And then we can pause for some time.
Yeah. She follows to the goal of those that are passing on beyond. She is the first in the eternal succession of the dawns that are coming. Usha widens, bringing out that which lives, awakening someone who was dead. What is her scope when she harmonizes with the dawns that shone out before and those that now must shine? She desires the ancient mornings and fulfills their light, projecting forward her illumination. She enters into communion with the rest that are to come. This is Kutsa Angirasa, I don't know how to pronounce that, from the Rig Veda. Somehow it just feels like from Savitri only, she follows the goals of those. Usha means a sun only, na?
Yeah, Usha means these rays of the sun, the first rays, And exactly as you were sharing, symbol dawn se kafi iska link hai. And I think somewhere Savitri, है ना, Savitri का जो its relation to sun, that that is also linked somewhere.
So second one also I will read.
पढ़ो.
Yeah. Threefold are those supreme births of this divine force that is in the world. Threefold are those supreme births of this divine force that is in the world. They are true, they are desirable. He moves there wide over within the infinite and shines pure, luminous and fulfilling. That which is immortal in mortals and possessed of the truth is a God and established inwardly as an energy working out in our divine power. Become high uplifted, O strength, pierce all veils, manifest in us the things of the Godhead. Vamdeva Rig Ved. Seems like a prayer, right?
Yeah,
Second part.
yeah. You know, there is this very interesting website which I'll share right now with you, which one can refer to again and again. Oh, sorry. कहाँ चला गया? Yeah. So this one, I've been consulting this from time to time. It's beautiful. So Kirit Joshi was one of very close kind of sadhaks, disciples, and he has extensively lectured.
Okay.
So आप देखो यहाँ पे, ये देखो lectures, and his explanations are pretty kind of like understandable. He helps us to understand the words. जैसे यहाँ पे ना here देखो क्या क्या करते हैं. So this is all by him. And then complete works. He complete works as speeches, lectures. Yeah. ये देखो Sri Aurobindo's Life Divine, the Human Aspiration. है ना? So it just came to me that we could also consult this. So one, yeah, there's also a transcript actually.
Should we read this right now?
क्या क्या लगता है आपको? मतलब I don't know. I just wanted to share with you that this is also some additional kind of a reference that we can use for this. But yeah, let's go through that first on our own, and then we can add on. A lot of content here. Yeah. So let's read the first paragraph. You know, this search for this. He talks about this search. Yeah, the search after pure truth, unmixed bliss. And in every endeavor, we are actually wanting that only, but unknowingly, you know, we don't know that we are looking for that. Jैसे, you know, a sense of secret immortality. So now, through our hospitals, you know, through life insurances, What are we trying to do really? We all have this inherent, and death, we don't like death. Yeah.
Now, this is really nice. The earliest formula of wisdom promised to be its last. It's like
True.
we do so much because we want that, okayness. We want to be at ease. And that is where we start. And after doing so much, we realize that nothing needs to be done and we end there, when we let go of all the efforts. So it's so apparent that the earliest formula of wisdom, how first the kids, we tell them that, this is your father, this is your mother, this is the world, this is how you behave. Like first the learning from, when it's not even required, most of it. And then the unlearning, that whatever you have been taught, just forget and, be with yourself, which you always were. But here it says the earliest formula of wisdom promises to be its last: God, light, freedom, and immortality. Yeah. So move on. Na?
Yeah, let's read the next one.
Since we are recording this, does it make sense to read out all the lines, or this you think is fine?
I think reading out would be also nice if we want to, because yeah. So
Because इसमें पेस का भी हो रहा है ना, like we don't realize who's where.
yeah, yeah,
Out makes clear where one is, है ना?
yeah. Let's read out. You continue reading for the first one, that you already did, and then this one, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. So and how often should I stop? Because एकदम से बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाता है ना, wherever I feel like it,
Why not? Yeah.
or after every, we can experiment, right? So the earliest preoccupation of man in his awakened thoughts, and as it seems his inevitable and ultimate preoccupation, for it survives the longest periods of skepticism and returns after every banishment, is also the highest which his thoughts can envisage. I don't think there would be anybody who hasn't experienced this, right? Returns after every banishment. it manifests itself in the divination of Godhead, the impulse towards perfection, the search after pure truth and unmixed bliss, the sense of a secret immortality. What this it manifests itself in the divination of Godhead. What does this mean?
So I believe that when you make the Godhead within the king of your kingdom, for example,
Okay.
usually, so that's what it means by divination, that now the Godhead is himself invoked and is the center of the being. Yeah.
The ancient dawns of human knowledge have left us their witness to this constant aspiration. Today we see a humanity satiated but not satisfied by victorious analysis of the externalities of nature, preparing to return to its primeval longings. The earliest formula of wisdom promises to be its last: God, light, freedom, immortality. This is also very interesting, satiated but not satisfied. I mean, I think so many times in just one day, we are here, we are here, we are here.
And
And that,
also, yeah, also this, not satisfied by victorious analysis of externalities of nature. So this, how, what science, for example, right now, the science, kind of science we have, it's mostly nowadays, I think it's changing pretty fast. We are always looking at objects, so there is a scientist and who is looking always at the externalities of nature, always at the objects, but I always miss the observer. And that has been a challenge, I would say. And nowadays I believe there are people who are really taking that also into account, because in science this is a very normal phenomenon, that and it is well researched also, that if I am a scientist, I'm looking at, say for example, I've done an experiment. hmm, Overnight I've placed some experiment and I'm looking at it. The result of that experiment depends on who is looking. So this is well researched. And this also happens in our life, that if a cup has broken, for example, how I see that little finite kind of thing that has happened would depend on the filter that I'm using to see. That's what Tenzing Palmo again and again shares, that we don't see the things that as they really are. So it's not that the cup has not broken, but the way that I look at it, kisne kiya, kisne rakha. So it's like always filtered, always I have this filter. And I don't realize that I'm looking at the external happening with the filter. So that's why it never is very satisfying in nature, because it's never absolute, it's always with the filter. And so this victorious analysis, now we have gone on Mars and all the planets, we are covering one by one, and yet it's not satisfying in nature. Yeah.
these persistent ideals of the race are at once the contradiction of its normal experience. These persistent ideals of the race are at once the contradiction of its normal experience and the affirmation of higher and deeper experiences which are abnormal to humanity and only to be attained in their organized entirety by a revolutionary individual effort or an evolutionary general progression.
Mm.
Very
So,
interesting.
so he says that these ideals, everybody wants God, unknowingly, knowingly, light, freedom, immortality. These idols of the race, although these are idols, but the way we live is absolutely contradictory. The these persistent ideals of the race are at once contradiction of its normal experience. What do I normally have? I don't have God. I don't experience God 24 hours a day. I don't experience light, freedom, immortality. So it's just contrasting what we experience. Yeah.
And how, again and again, it feels how strange, right? Like, how can ideals be abnormal? And how it's like what I'm living towards, walking towards on a regular basis, which I call my normal life. And this contrast you see again and again in the Upanishads too, right? Like what you are looking at is not real. What you're not looking at is, has a potential of being real. It's very fascinating, at times frustrating, but yeah. Okay. To know, possess, and be the divine being in an animal and egoistic consciousness, to convert our twilt or obscure physical mentality into the plenary supermental illumination, to build peace and a self-existent bliss, where there is only a stress of transitory satisfactions, besieged by physical pain and emotional suffering, to establish an infinite freedom in a world which presents itself as a group of mechanical necessities, to discover and realize the immortal life in a body subjected to death and constant mutation. This is offered to us as the manifestation of God in matter and the goal of nature in her terrestrial evolution.
No, I feel that we may not really understand what Sri Aurobindo says here, absolutely. We may only get hints here and there. But even reading this, something in us kind of goes, yes, 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 as if something in us recognizes the truth being spoken here. Yeah.
To build peace and self existent bliss where there is stress only on transitory satisfactions.
Mm.
I mean, it's just amazing how you are told that just, everything is okay, but at least, have, like, I don't know, like just satisfy yourself right now.
Mm.
Be okay right now, right? Like these temporary happinesses,
Mm.
transitory satisfaction is what my whole world is pushing me towards, right? And
Yeah,
yet there's something in all of us which, we know it doesn't work, right?
yeah, yeah,
And yet, because it feels like such a strong collective, right? That first of all, we don't question it. If we feel that think that this is not okay, we try to suppress it, right? There's something that is wrong with me that I am not getting satisfied. And we see it so often, right? In changing, I
yeah,
don't know, partners, jobs,
yeah,
and
yeah,
anything.
yeah. And for how many eons we have been running after these
Yeah.
transitory, not only a lifetime, eons running after these transitory satisfactions. I think this is what we were sharing yesterday, Friday study, that we have seen that no desire really fulfills us. It always gives us a very temporary, transitory satisfaction and then leaves us handed again, nothing really truly fulfilling. And yet we are अंधाधुंध जैसे एक रेस होती है ना मतलब and it's not that we don't want this self-existent bliss, this lasting happiness. And that's why we run after every desire because we want happiness. It's not that we don't want it, but it feels like maybe we are a child that who in their innocence or ignorance, just runs after blindedly without any wisdom at all. That last time इससे कुछ मिला था, कुछ हल्का सा we have a little taste. I think that's why we run after these people in our life who may have, coming together, they may have shown that face a little, that okay, this oneness is possible. But then we cling to the person, that, oh, you showed me oneness, so you have to show me it again and again. So, but that doesn't happen. So it's, yeah, it's very interesting.
And establish an infinite freedom in a world which presents itself as a group of mechanical necessities, relies immortal life in a body subjected to death. And again, that, mutation word that yesterday again,
Yeah.
constant mutation.
Mm.
We don't even know, right? That how we are just, I mean, it's a fact, and yet that we are moving towards our death, right? The moment a kid is born,
Yeah.
he's walking towards his death. It sounds weird,
Mm.
and yet it is such a big fact. Immortal life in a body subjected to death and constant mutation, and yet we fear change, right? And everything about us is changing.
Mm.
It's offered to us as the manifestation of God in matter and the goal of nature.
Yeah. So even nature, the process appears very laborious. If we look even, let's say, collectively, globally, dekhen, so the process appears so. And Shri Aurobindo in the symbol dawn, and Savitri also, he shares now, that the nature, how she, the how she creates or manifests is like he in abundance, ki idhar giraya, jaise, like a pot of jewels I have, thoda idhar gira diya, thoda, it doesn't matter, she has so much. And then she would create maybe a being, and it doesn't seem perfect, and then she would wipe it away out of evolution. Jurassic Park, dinosaurs gone extinct. So she would create with so much of abundance, and then it doesn't matter to her, so the way she evolves, manifestation. And it's not that her goal is different from the goal of the divine. The goal is the same, but the process is so laborious. It's using so much of kind of finances, economics, but she doesn't bother, that's her ways. Manifestation of God in matter. I think this has been a revelation. If I talk about how personally I see it, earlier it appears that, that nature is going somewhere else, and we want something else. But in Mother and Sri Aurobindo, it comes again and again that nature is also trying to manifest the divine in the material. All her processes may be too laborious, too struggling, full of toil, but that's what she wants, and look what she has created, and a human being out of where she began, a stone. So yeah. And frankly speaking, when we were reading this God Speaks, Meher Baba, so it did not make any sense कि ये क्या हो रहा है, stone से life, there, although we were reading it, but to me it never made any sense before these words of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that how the evolution happens. And now the dots are connecting. Now I can connect it with what Meher Baba was sharing a little.
Again, I just want to go back to this transitory satisfactions
Mm-hmm.
word. In the harmony circle this week, again, that line that, again, the Rumi code basically, that you're sitting in the prison with the key in your hand. We were reflecting on what are the things that make you just sit there, with the key in the hand. And one of those things was this, that, the temporary things that we get, they seem all right, right? Like the prison doesn't seem that bad. I think this is something that one needs to sit with, that how many times, right? Like this again, like you were saying, that we have been going through this for so long. It again, just live for, I don't know, it's a bit contradictory also, but just those small wins or losses that we call it, which occupy us, And we don't look at the bigger picture, right? A whole life is spent. A lot of people, we like you hear it so often that pata hi nahi chala. We didn't even realize where my life went. I was so focused, with my tunnel vision of things that I was told I'm supposed to achieve, and the everyday, like one good meal kind of touches something, right? Like it feels that, yeah, I'll think about bliss later, but let me at least, have this meal and just be fully, like, I don't know. It's amazing, this, our belief and our okayness with these transitory satisfactions. I just, like, I'm looking at these very closely, these, days, and it's nothing short of amazement at how we do it, how I do it again and again and again.
I think that's why I feel that Krishnamurti, again and again, talking to specifically young people, he would say that uh, you nurture this discontent that you have, you nurture this dissatisfaction that you have, because that is going to push you forward. So it's, usually we look at it in a very negative way. Oh, are you dissatisfied? How sad that you're dissatisfied. But as we know that every word has its meaning in both sense. So he would say that it's good to be dissatisfied. कि गंदे के साथ गंदे बन के रहना, it's not shubh. So good that you see the ugliness in you, and that is what will propel you forward towards beauty.
Yeah.
Mother also, again and again she shares that look at your imperfections, pick them out and look at your uglinesses, so that you can move towards beauty. If you do, if I don't even recognize that there is something non-beautiful in me, how would I put effort, at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because somehow, like, even yesterday I got a call from somebody who was in the circle saying that how this thought is, kind of hurting her. She's not be able to be at peace, knowing that how can I still be sitting in the prison, knowing so much, seeing so much. And that's exactly what I felt, that this is a good thought, be here. The problem is not this thought that says that, this is wrong. The thought is that the problem is we get over this thought too quickly, right? It feels okay after some time. It doesn't stay is the problem. So it's really interesting how the rages, the, dissatisfactions are so important. To something breaks every time, right? Like a little bit, how entangled are our, I don't know, threads in the need for these transitory satisfactions. And every time I think I pause, it feels maybe, even 0.01%, if one thread moved a bit, that is one big step towards straightening maybe the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's the need of unpleasant emotions, inertia, to move us from inertia. Mother says that even passion is preferable over inertia. So we have this tendency to, I think, owing to this heaviness and dullness from the matter, I think we have this tendency to settle down, get adapted to. So we get adapted to stress. So that stress is a way of life, and so that I don't have to change. But if I now, as you were sharing about your friend, if I now become dissatisfied with stress, so maybe after maybe 2 months of remaining dissatisfied, one day I will get up. You were sharing about this morning thing also, that I'm now, I will have to do something about getting up in the morning, for example. So I think, to nurture that dissatisfaction, to not get okay with it, so that one day it leads us to this moving from our settlement zones. And this happens with every tragedy that we face in our life. It moves us, no matter how discomfort we may have to go through it, but yet it moves us. Yeah, so
Yeah.
whatever moves.
Yeah.
Mm. This is also very interesting, to establish an infinite freedom in a world which presents itself as a group of mechanical necessities, that this appears important, that appears, everything appears important, and to give importance to infinite freedom, that comes in our list almost the last. There is so much to attend to, khana bana le, naha le, dho le. So much is important and waiting. So I think it's, again, as we discuss again and again, it's almost a race against our own self, that a fight against our own patterns, our own ways of living, to establish an infinite freedom, to give importance to that a little, in a world which presents itself as a group of mechanical necessities, to discover and realize the immortal life in a body subjected to death and constant mutation. Yeah. This is offered, he says that this is offered to us as the manifestation of God in matter. I think that's where Sri Aurobindo goes a little kind of way ahead in many senses, that earlier जैसे कहते हैं ना कि यहाँ तो नहीं मिलेगा, है ना, sadhu and sant, they would say that यहाँ नहीं मिलेगा, okay, leave the material world and focus, realization of the soul. Now soul reaches very fast to the realization, but the material remains dark. And this is where they have offered us something really beautiful, that the perfection is possible in the material domain itself.
Just this line, immortal life in a body subjected to death. Like, it just seems so hard to even go in that direction, right? To look for my immortality when the body right now, today, because of, with its senses, the five indriyas, like, the sense of accomplishment I feel, or satisfaction, like those, again, like I said, a meal can feel like eternal bliss for 10 minutes. It amazes me the actual level that we touch. Like you were mentioning that, okay, somebody said something and we felt something in that. And 20 years later, also after, being, I don't know, again, being, I don't know, violated with that person for 20 years, we are again holding on to just that single moment of oneness that I felt with him. It's just amazing how we don't see it, that it was in me, right? That I touched something. He was just a, I don't know, something that just brought it forward, right? It was just like, yeah. Like if I want to write and somebody encouraged me to write, right? It's like instead of now focusing on my writing, I just start with that person, right? That you encouraged me. Must be something in you that made me this. It's really interesting how we, and this is true everywhere. Like we just keep getting lost and stuck everywhere. So yeah, I think maybe we should move on.
Rupert Spira, he shares again and again in many ways that the experience of oneness, or intimate experience, that often one has, for example, falling in love, all that. He shares that it actually is an unmasking of our shared being. So actually the other person did not do anything, but the clouds for a moment got scattered, and we experience that beautiful oneness that all of us have, and the mind, the ego, the ego sense comes up again after that sense is lost, and it says, oh, that was beautiful, but I want that again, and throughout our life we are running after that, and we are not getting, and yet blinded, that what really just happened. So it's not that the ego is not craving for that oneness, but the way in which we crave is always a way where we stumble and fall and hurt ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. to the ordinary material intellect, which takes its present organization of consciousness for the limit of its possibility. The direct contradiction of the unrealized ideals with the realized fact is a final argument against their validity. I'll read this again. To the ordinary material intellect, which takes its present organization of consciousness for the limit of its possibilities, the direct contradiction of the unrealized ideals with the realized fact is a final argument against their validity. But
Yes.
if we take, I'm sorry, I thought I'll
Yeah,
read
yeah.
the.
Yeah.
But if we take a more deliberate view of the world's working, that direct opposition appears rather as part of nature's profoundest method and the seal of her completest sanction. Yeah.
You know how we, I think, just hinting towards how we, in our limited conceptual mind, knowing that, okay, the ideals may be God, freedom, light, immortality, but it is not possible. The way I am, it's not possible, you know. So this ordinary material intellect, which always focuses on matter, on finite, and on always focusing on the limits and getting lost in the limits also, you know, to the ordinary material intellect, which takes its present organization, the way I am today, of consciousness, the ordinary limited conceptual consciousness, which always boxes, categorizes, you know, it has to always put things in proper place for the limit of its possibilities. So this is my limit. Categorization is my limit. The direct contradiction of the unrealized ideals, that how is it possible that in matter I have God? This contradiction, unrealized ideals, with the realized fact is a final argument against their validity. Ki ye to possibility. So this is my, here I stop, you know, that having God in nature is not possible. God is somewhere else, nature is somewhere else. You know, so this is, and I stamp it with my seal. The material intellect is stamping it with my seal. But if we take a more deliberate view of the world's workings, that direct opposition rather as appears rather as part of nature's profoundest method and the seal of her completest sanction. That yes, it is going to, just because it is impossible today, is the very proof that it will be possible someday. You know, Sri Aurobindo also shares in one of his, I think, thoughts and aphorism, you know, about impossibility, that impossibility is the beginning of a possibility. So the very fact that something is weak today tells me that yes, strength is possible in the same thing tomorrow. Yeah.
And I think that is why, you know, the masters and mystics, they attract us so much. And how, when I see something that I am not able to do yet, right? And I see it in someone, how it expands me, right? That this too is my possibility, right? Like this life that I live so limited, you know, how I keep on drawing limits around me. Like I keep erasing, but then I draw new limits. I keep erasing, thinking that is freedom. But what I'm doing is putting more circles, right? Maybe slightly bigger or smaller. They might look bigger. And I keep limiting myself. And you know, these limits, like they say, the limit of its possibilities, at how I do it, it's like there's something in me which just wants excuses, right? Because maybe working is tougher and being just what I am is easier, right? Some ways, superficially, it seems it's easier that, okay, you know, maybe, oh, I'm too young. I can't take that decision, or oh, I'm a girl, and in my society, girls don't do that. Or, I am too old. Now it's not possible for me to change. It's like, and it doesn't feel like an excuse. When you are saying it, it feels like the truth of your being. That nahi, mere se nahi hoga kinds, na? Though that Nanak, he to was, living in a farm and he had some, he was born an avatar. It's not that he realized and he became, right? Like, of course, there's a transition, but my, I don't know, conviction towards my limits is something, again, that I don't know, I need to
Yeah,
loosen a
I
bit.
think एक conviction की जगह अगर हम ये बोले ना तो शायद ज्यादा दिखेगा. My attachment and clinging to my limits. That with the example that we were discussing that day, the monkey is clinging on to the sweets, although it is making him tight in the matka. His hand is stuck now, but he's not letting it go. He's not letting it go. So I think, as we were discussing yesterday also, that even clinging to my limits gives me a satisfaction. It makes me a sense of ego. So either I cling to my greatness or I cling to my limits. Clinging is clinging. I just want a separate sense of self. Ego just wants to perpetuate itself. चलो अगर बड़ी नहीं हो पाई तो छोटी हो जाऊं. कुछ तो होने दो. So this kind of fluidity, that we may have in our life, that is not validated. मतलब ego would not want that कि अरे कुछ तो होने दो ना. अच्छा बड़े नहीं हो, चलो मैं संत नहीं हूँ, छोटी तो हूँ. So कुछ पकड़ के रखना है, कुछ पकड़ के रखना है. Yeah, very interesting.
I think the word that you use, my attachment to my limit, I think it's really important and it changes the way you look at things. Because again, usme you're becoming like a victim, right? Like that ego game that you were talking about. That mere se nahi hoga, right? मैं करना तो चाहती हूँ, but when I realize that that is also my attachment to my limits, it just kind of, it pokes you more, right? It becomes a bit more uncomfortable to keep believing in these things. And this, it's amazing about the ego also, like you were so beautifully sharing, that it just wants to be the center of attraction, by insults, by accusations to oneself or others, like big, small, anything, make me anything, right? Like if I am a victim, it's like मेरे साथ हुआ, like किसके साथ होगा जो मेरे साथ हुआ. It's just like the way it makes us fool, right? It's just, or whatever the games that it plays, that there's no logic. And I think that is why it's hard to understand that it is my ego, because how can somebody be happy in their own destruction, right? It's contradictory. Again, we're talking about contradictions, that okay, big, I understand, but why would I want to be small? That doesn't make any sense. And yet that's how it operates. Yeah.
And we feel that I am living a life, or I am standing for myself, hence I am playing victim. And we don't know that the whole life is spent playing a servant to the ego. We don't understand, we don't get it, that this limited self that I want to be again and again, it's nothing but serving the limited self. And in that I stop serving the truth, which is my own reality. Or so I think this thing about कि कुछ तो बना दो, कुछ तो बना दो. अरे छोटा नहीं तो बड़ा, बड़ा नहीं तो छोटा. और ये इसमें जो ये वाला सेंस दिखता है ना, बिन पैंदे का लूटा, कि अच्छा बड़े नहीं बन पाए तो चलो छोटे बना दो, कुछ बना दो. So I think this is so ugly also in nature if we go close to it, that you can't be with it. कि ये मैं कर क्या रही हूँ, ये मैं कर क्या रही हूँ, कि ना इसके लिए मैं कुछ भी करूंगी, कितनी दूर तक भी जाऊंगी. And I think I have seen personally in my life happening, that one can inflict so much of torture on oneself in order to be something. बड़ा नहीं तो छोटा बना दो, but बना दो. कुछ बना दो. Amazing how far we can, go there. Yeah. And we still remain a beggar. That's the beauty, that we don't get anything by serving to the needs of the separate self. Yeah.
And this whole thing about how the whole world is revolved around creating limits around me. Like when you were reading this, it's just like, I remember listening to this that I think once asked my father that why do people have to get married so early? Like why is there this, like, age that, okay, 18, 20 years, it sounds so small. And when I was growing up, that was the age. Like when I was small, thankfully, then people used to get married between, still now, still I know there are people, even in my families, who got married before 20. And he said, because, after a certain age, or as you become older, you, the rigidities of your minds, they get established. So before those are established, you are married into a family so that you can gel better, so that you're flexible, that if that person says, okay, do this, you'll be like, yes. That person, so like, it's like my developing my individuality works against the societies. So that is also, see, not letting the limits come in, but see where that, how it is being used, right? So that you can serve the collective for this, not in a, for not expansion, right? That serving is again towards smallness. They're using that, the same thing, to, yeah, I think
Yeah, totally, absolutely. I agree, because I see this, that mother says that first, in order to surrender, what will you surrender to the divine? You have to surrender something. So ego, again, as we discussed many times, ego is a helper, ego is the bar. Now, ego, mother says, is a temporary individuality before the psychic individuality or the true person that you are, that comes forward. And this thing that you are sharing, to marry off before one has actually gathered oneself, if one can say, I think really very stark to see that how it's not that being an individual is bad, being an individual is beautiful. But before that can happen, let me distort that personality. It's actually a distortion of individuality to serve, as you said beautifully, to serve the needs of the collective. And that we have been doing since ages, all of us, we have been doing. Society wants more engineers, okay, let provide more engineers. So 100 unique beings who could have become unique human beings now are boxes. It's not, I have nothing against engineers, I think laptop is given by engineers, but yet, we mask our true individuality in the pressure of the collective. Yeah.
and that is done by people in the name of love, right? That because if she becomes an individual right now, her life in the other house, for example, just using this example, will be difficult. So I am the father and I want her good, right? That is me wanting her good by not letting her develop her individuality, so that she can be a slave, like just using stronger words, to the collective and stuff. And she doesn't mind, right? Because if she's established in herself, she would not be able to do that. And this is our love.
Yeah, rather than giving the person opportunity to develop an individuality, whether or not it fits the collective or not. So yeah, I think this compromise towards flowering of the individual, I think Osho really comments on it a lot, that society almost has always all the time never been a friend to development of this true individuality. Yes. Yeah. And that's why most of us, most of the people who walk the spiritual path in the beginning also, they felt very lone people, loners, but that, like a black sheep or not belonging to the herd. Yeah.
Should we end? It's an hour, or I don't know. My battery is kind of showing that no.
Yeah, almost. We can end here today. 8 minutes. Yeah, this one was also very interesting here, So first of all, it gives us inspiration, that this is possible to build peace in a self-existent place when there is only stress of transitory satisfactions besieged by physical pain and emotional suffering. So the further I go in pleasure, it turns into suffering very soon. It can never, I can never have absolute pleasure to through material stuff. That's something which we again and again see, that very soon our relationships, for example, if they are not centered around something higher than personal satisfactions, very soon they turn into emotional suffering. I think this we see the inadequacy of human relationships. And yet he gives us an inspiration here that it is possible to build peace and a self-existent bliss where there is only stress of transitory satisfactions besieged by physical pain and emotional suffering. This also a visual came in the sense that imagine that I'm a marathon runner. I may be enjoying the marathon, running, and then I have pain in my knees. How far can I go? So this limit of material consciousness, it almost challenges us again and again that yahan nahi milega, and that's why we run towards something transcendent. But he gives us inspiration that this is possible here, that material can also become divine. Yeah. Okay. Anything more here you want to add on? This is also beautiful, to convert our twilight, and twilight would refer to half lit, it's not like just like sunsets are there or dawn is there. It's a transition. So this mind that I have, the physical material mind, the conceptual mind, it's half obscure, that it sees yet it doesn't see. So I see a little here and there, but whatever I see is not the absolute truth. And he shares that to convert our twilight or obscure physical mentality, this conceptual mind, boxing, categorizing mind that we have, into the plenary, absolute, unqualified, which is totally, I was just looking at the meaning of plenary, and it says unqualified, which cannot be qualified by any meaning, which cannot have any borders, which cannot have any limits. To transfer that obscurity into something which is absolute and without limits, supramental illumination. And he shares that that is a possibility. So there is a possibility to have an illumined mind, which is nothing but a servant to truth. So, yeah. What I would say, this relates very well to what Tenzin Palmo again shares, the enlightened mind, the illumined mind. So when they talk about in Buddhism about Bodhi Chitta, so Chitta is, whenever we talk about Manas, Chitta, Chitta is always linked to the mind. And Bodhi is awakened and illumined. So that is our true nature, an illumined mind, which is a servant to the truth. That is my true nature. And towards that, we must walk. And it is possible that I live through that and make my life, my thoughts, and my physical an expression of that illumination. It is possible. And that's the perfection in Buddhism we come across, that, that it is possible to have generosity, compassion, kindness, all of that living in this material form. You want to add on something, or shall we?
I think just the end, just that this opposition,
Yeah.
that we see and which often is a bit frustrating, right? Like opposition within me between, my say darkness and light or progression and limits between everything, like this opposition, it feels, there's something in me that's stopping me. There's something in me which wants to walk and, yet something is not ready. And the world is like we were sharing with that example, but somehow this direct opposition between the two is what seems like the way, right? Like, I remember there's this a book called Da Vinci Code. Again, it was about like how the signals and signs, and I think in Bible also, there was this reference that there's like, magic hidden in these holy texts, but it's hidden so beautifully that the one who's ready is the only one who can decipher the meaning. Because if this goes into somebody who would use it in a bad way, can actually destroy the world. So I think, that is why it's not that black and white, right? Because sometimes in frustration you think that why does it have to be so tough, right? Like why can't it be simply, okay, this is what you are actually here to do, this is your goal, this is to aim, now do this, right? Like why do I have to be attracted and glamorized towards 50,000 million things before I say that, okay, not even this, not even this, because I am making myself ready, right? Like because this resolve is not easy. And if you just keep getting stalled, then it's just more wastage, right? So first do this, complete this, be in the oppositions, live in the oppositions, and then you start standing against that. No, I don't agree, don't agree, don't agree. And that also amazes me that how just saying it once that I don't agree doesn't work for me. For a Buddha, it did. He saw and he was like, that's it. I don't want to go through all this. But for me, I have to keep standing again and again to the oppositions and choose a side, and that's how it's supposed to be. Like,
I think there is a purpose, Mother shares that Sri Aurobindo also, in his own words, that the universe is based on the delight of being. Now we see that if I see a little darkness in me and if make an effort to turn it to light, it gives us joy and delight. So if the opposition is not there, if the delight is not there, if steps are too simple, what fun. But if steps are difficult and we see ourselves progress, Mother shares progress gives you joy, effort gives you joy. And since the delight existence is based on joy, Ananda, so I think the dualities serve a purpose, do serve a purpose. Me.
yeah, but just because it takes so much maybe effort and perseverance, it looks like it's very frustrating, right? Like it feels that I've been here 100 times before. And yet, if you look at it from a step back position, 100 times is nothing. But it has a tendency to, it can take you towards, kind of being disheartened too. But that too is just the stalling of the process, right? But it's like, how do I do this? Why does it have
Yeah,
to be this hard? Like it
yeah.
could be slightly simple, but like, yeah, and again, those are, I think, maybe the wrong questions, right? Like the more
Hmm.
I dwell in them, the
Hmm.
more they just stall me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I feel that at times, it can be said it in this way, but how I am able to see when you're sharing here. See, the idea for me is to basically get out of the limited conceptual mind, which always categorizes, puts things into good and bad categories, and to become a little liberated of that, the knot of ego, as we say, the knot of limited mind. Now, the moment I'm judging that, oh my God, I have been here, again, I'm categorizing. So I don't realize, it's so subtle that I don't realize. And yet, walking the game, I am still in the limited conceptual mind. So I find myself again and again stuck in that categorization, such as the comedy. And I feel that I have progressed. And even when I say I have progressed, I am again categorizing. And if I say I have digressed, oh my God, how many times I've been again categorizing. So it's like, matha follow up na ki kitni baar, again and again, it's almost like a ditch, a very slippery ditch that you keep falling into, that we keep falling into. And one can actually laugh about it, that's why they say it's a comedy also. Yeah.
And I think similar to this, again, the limits, right? Like I feel I'm expanding and I don't even realize there again, okay, I can have 2 glasses of water, but now I can have three, three seems like the sky, right? Like for example, but I don't realize I've again given it a number, right?
Yeah.
Again, give it, okay,
Yeah.
this is, I did so much.
Yeah.
It's beyond that I can do,
Yeah.
right? And again, a limit. Limit.
I think you may remember maybe this story from some maybe Zen tradition or somewhere, where don't know who shared it, where this disciple comes to the master and he gives him a lot of cows. And okay, you take these cows and don't come back unless you've become one of them. You remember that? So because animals don't categorize, animals would not box. So almost appears like that, but it's not that, so yeah, it appears like you're back to being an animal again, like as if you're gone dumb, but this dumbness is a different dumbness than the dumbness that animal may have. Yeah. Mm. Great. So I wanted, maybe we could do whatever session we do, we could make a dedication, just like they do. Tenzin Palmo, she also does it every time, to dedicate the virtue of the satsang or whatever to the infinite number of beings. So shall I put it in front, that dedication, or shall we just do it inwardly?
No, you, whatever you feel,
I'll
put it
just,
in front,
yeah, I'll
yeah,
put
and
it
then
in
you can
front.
read it.
Yeah. Just a second. Yeah, so this is the dedication. I'll just read it out loud. I dedicate the virtue I have gathered throughout the 3 times, along with the virtue of the victorious ones, the bodhisattvas and all beings, following in the footsteps of the Buddhas and their heirs, to the lasting happiness of all the infinite number of beings. May the virtue of this gathering go to the lasting happiness of all.